Okay, so yeah, I realized I forgot to show you guys. It's one thing I forget to use in Zremesh. Kind of just show this quickly, I guess. Oops, what did I do? Let me just duplicate my tool here and show you an example. All right. So Zremesh actually has this kind of cool function. So we'll pretend this thing is, let's say, dynameshed. So I'll just dynamesh this guy. No to freezing subdivisions. There we go. So when you want to Zremesh a dynamesh. So this is a dynamesh model. If I want to Zremesh it, you can, in fact. So there's this option I mentioned before called adaptive density. What that will do is simply ignore the poly count, or if it sees detail that the target poly count can't hit, it'll increase the resolution. So I usually turn that off because I generally have a specific target poly count in mind, and I'll increase curve strengths. Again, I find increasing that curve strengths too high can yield some weird results. So I usually move the slider in between 50 and 80 as a value. There's also this little section called Use Polypaint. So Polypaint is essentially painting directly on the mesh. And the great thing about ZBrush, you hold control over any of the buttons or sliders. It tells you exactly what it does. So it's like an instant pop-up menu for that item. So the way polypainting works in the case of Zremesh is that red will specify higher density or higher poly areas. Blue will mean lower poly areas. And white is kind of like no influence. Now the way polypainting works, it's a little strange, but I tend to use the standard brush. So whatever brush you're using will kind of dictate how you can paint and what color you can put on the mesh. And if you look across the top of ZBrush, there's Z sub, Z add, the material channel, RGB, and material and RGB are color. So I usually turn off, again, using the standard brush, I'll turn off Z add, activate RGB. And when you do that, if you switch color, you notice like the model will change color sometimes. This may happen by accident. Sometimes if you hit the C key, by the way, it'll like grab a color as like a color eyedropper tool. So when you hit C on something, it'll pick up the color from that area. But generally what I do is just set my color palette to white, again with the standard brush active, RGB active, which is going to tell this color palette area. So it's color, you go fill object, it'll fill with white. So that now is basically filled with a white color. So if I want to direct Zremesh, I can use guides as well as this color setting. So I can tell it to concentrate loops around the eyes, concentrate loops around the lips. Very much looks like clown makeup. So red, pure red is supposed to be like an area to concentrate. If I want less polys, let's say on the top and back of the head, I can kind of paint that blue. If you want to see what the colors themselves look like, I usually will switch to skin shade or flat color. I mean, skin shade is a little easier because you actually get some shading on the surface. So I can kind of direct ZBrush. And it says, too, the intensity, which is, if you notice, there's an RGB intensity slider, which is very much like the Z intensity. So the more intense or saturated the color, the more aggressive that Zremeshing is going to be, the concentration of loops or the removal of loops. So if I go without even any guides, but if I just hit Zremesh, I'll get this different result. Or you'll see more loops concentrated around the eyes, more around the lips, less around the back and neck. Yeah, it's something I always forget to use, but it's a really great option. So, yeah. So I may also throw in a couple of guides for this as well. So, and I probably should have dynameshed this with a little more detail, but that's okay. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of bring that up because it was something I think I'd skipped or missed in the other lectures. Okay, so saying I find with the guides on and the polypaint, it will take. Oh, I didn't actually turn on the polypaint option. So you want to activate polypaint and then Zremesh that. Now, once you're done with that, you typically want to clear the color. Again, ZBrush has a lot of strange little quirks to it. So to clear color, what you actually need to do is set I usually set my color. So there you go. You see there's more loops around the lips and stuff now. They may not be great, but it can be useful in some situations. This is a little messy and ugly, so it's probably not a result I would use. But anyway, so to reset color, I can go flat color, set my color to white, and I'll go to color, color fill object again. So the same thing goes, if you want to reset a material, sometimes you can actually paint a material on in certain spots. So what I mean by that is if you hit M, if I switch to this material and brush in, let me go back to standard brush, actually switch to M, you can actually paint a material in a certain area and it'll stay behind in that area. So whenever you want to reset color and material, you simply set things to flat white, flat color, set your color palette to 100% white. Make sure you're on mRGB, go to color fill object, and it kind of like resets the material settings and the color settings. So you can kind of go back to this sort of standard preview. Now, like I said, the face is a little ugly, but let me delete that. Delete. So I'll take this guy. I still have to fix his lip area. So I'll go Z to Maya. Okay, so yeah, the mouth topology stuff is going to be fairly similar to fixing the eye topology. I do have some little glitches, I think, that happened when I exported this out, so I would probably go back and clean up this eye loop area. It's a little messy. Again, I usually start by just going right into the front view. By the way, you can quickly get to a front view in Maya by tapping the space bar, and then it'll bring you to a 4-view layout, and then you can sort of tap over, so hover your mouse over the viewport and tap space bar again. It'll bring you, so tap, hover over perspective, tap on that, and I'll jump to perspective. Oh, I'm going to fix this little guy. So I'll just bridge that, or yeah, maybe I'll collapse it or something, but I'll worry about it later. Yeah, so I'm just going to touch up the eye a little bit. So yeah, my method, standard method, is pretty much hack and slash. Let's take these guys out, take this out. So that kind of cleans up that area, but I do need to kind of feed in some loops over here. Let me also change the shader setup. So I'll go to the blend material. I tend to darken it. I'll turn off the specular shading as well, just to make it a little easier. Sometimes I'll keep just a little bit, so I can kind of maybe catch, sometimes you'll catch little mesh errors this way. So yeah, let's just take that out, and I may just continue this loop over here. So I'll, great thing about working this way is that you can kind of hide loops and get them to merge across openings like this. Something else that people missed, or maybe I did very quickly, if you want to constrain your edges so you're not changing the overall shape of the face, is you can double click on the move tool and set your transform constraint from off to edge. So you can kind of slide and redistribute edges along the face. You're not changing the overall shape, but you are redistributing the vertices so you don't get any weird pinching. Because what will happen is if you have loops that are very, very close together, like this, and if we, let's say down the road we subdivide this, if we go to object mode, sometimes you'll get, yeah, I might have to increase the shading specularity so you can see that a little better, but sometimes you get a little kind of pinch or ridge. It might be hard to see here, but having loops too close together, if the distribution isn't super even, can cause a bit of a weird pinching result. So we want to just kind of watch the distribution that, you know, it flows with the anatomy, yes, but that it doesn't kind of get, you know, certain loops don't get way closer to others. So there's kind of a bit of a back and forth with that. So for the mouth, and you may want to do this too. I mean, sometimes I'll do this, I'll export, I'll just go into ZBrush and export a higher res model just so I can sort of see the lip line. But for me right now, I'm just going to kind of try to make a mental note of the shape. So let me just see here. Switch to another material. So yeah, that lip line should be right here. There is one edge that's working with the lip line, but the lips come down across here. So what's happening is you see at a lower subdivision, there's kind of a diamond pattern happening, which is not good. We typically want an edge loop to kind of flow with that lip line, so it helps to really define that lip area. So I'll switch back to Maya. So yeah, I think the lips, I'm literally just going to by eye cut in what I think is essentially the lip line. So I think it's going to be something like this. So I think that's kind of the defining, what would be the defining border of the lips. Now the rest of this is trying to like create concentric circular loops around the mouth that radiate out. So there's usually, this is fairly low res, so I might only need 1 or 2 loops to come around this area. And I'll get to that in a second. It's just going to be kind of a lot of hack and slash for now. Let's collapse that edge. Maybe take this one out. Also, there's a bit of a dividing line. So if I jump back to ZBrush and go to the low res and just sort of check this out. So there's a nice loop that for the most part follows this lip area here. At some point, eventually, you will want the lips to be open. So I do need to, oops. Yeah, let's go multi-cut. So I think it's this area here. So this line should probably continue to about this area. This would be the corner of the lips, I believe. So what I'll do is I'll run that kind of edge there, and I'm going to bevel it. So eventually the lip area will need to be open. So I'll typically start by just giving a little bevel to that lip area. Chances are, just for this project at this stage, I will re-bridge this back together, but I like to start with an open area because it's easy to kind of feed loops into an open space. So like I did earlier with the eye area, I just kind of deleted the polys that would be invisible and then eventually kind of filled them back in after I fixed that area. Same thing with the nostril. I deleted the polys that were in that little area so I could run loops into that area very easily without having to worry about how it might continue through to the other side of the nostril, you know. So it just kind of allows you to quickly redirect the edge loops, essentially. So let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to multi-cut. So some of these loops are kind of all over the place, right? So I'm going to cut down into here and try to essentially redirect the traffic of these edge loops. And as you go, I'll take out some of the loops that are not quite working. Like that. Let's take this edge out. And again, we want kind of radiating loops. So I'll go to edge mode, cut this sort of circular loop in like so. This loop will essentially have to do the same thing. Let's take this out. And whenever you need to repeat commands, it's basically the G key, which will allow you to repeat the last function. Okay, so I'll watch the distribution as well. Move these along a little bit. Okay, so back to multi-cut. Let's see. Yeah, I don't always have a plan. It's usually doing it by feel. But yeah, let's go cut. Okay. So I'll take these two edges out. Right, so that kind of gives me consistency there. Yeah, let's take this thing out. There we go. So what I basically want to be able to do ultimately is kind of select and go around cleanly the mouth opening and have these kind of concentric circles. One problem is, you know, I usually have a square opening in the corners of the lips and the eyes, so I will have to sort of find which loops should sort of feed into the corners here, which I think would be something like this. Yeah, let me redirect the traffic there. Take that out. Collapse this over here. we go. So if you see, if I double click on this loop now, it actually will radiate around the mouth, but the problem is it's kind of terminating in this area. So again, I will pretty much use multi-cut to cut across, and maybe do something like that. Take that, double click that edge, I could take that out. You do see there's like a bit of a triangle there, right, which is a bit problematic. So let's see, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just cut straight down. Again, I can do that into the lip very easily, and if you take a look, that actually resolves that little triangular issue, right? And I may want to nudge that over just a bit. There. Okay. Okay, so this thing is kind of broken now, but so again, yeah, it's just multi-cutting until I find a solution that sort of works. So sometimes you have to change the directionality of these things a bit so you can get a better flow around the mouth. Again, I tend to just do all this by feel, so it's, you know, I've got a bit of experience. It'll take you guys a little longer to do this, but oops, let's just collapse that a little bit down. There we go. And if you take a look, you see I've got this triangle here. A lot of times if I look around another area and I say, well, there's a little bit of a strange turn in the polys, chances are if I multi-cut from here and maybe go through here, you see I can actually start to, again, change the direction of the mesh. So if I take this, yeah, let's take this edge, sorry, this edge, yeah. These two, take those out, and then take this out. You see I get this kind of nicer square looping. If there's another, you know, like little triangle here, I can very easily kind of terminate those two loops into one by collapsing them down. So it creates a much kind of cleaner topology, basically. Again, I'm going to watch the spacing. You see it's a little kind of all over the place, so I'm going to just watch that spacing a bit. There we go. And this will have to come out. This edge here. So I'll take this loop out for now. Let's see. So yeah, typically I want, yeah, something like this. I'm gonna have to change this up a little bit. There. Okay. So as I mentioned, I generally want, you know, if I have like 3 or 4 loops in the upper lip coming into this opening from the upper lip, I want the same number of loops entering from the bottom as well. So, you know, having that consistency is good because generally speaking, there isn't more like density or more detail in the upper lip versus the lower lip. They're generally pretty consistent. Same thing with the eyelids. So if you got like 4, 5, 6 loops entering the upper eyelid, you should have roughly the same number entering the lower. For me, it's a general rule that has worked very well, so that way you don't get weird subdivisions, weird distribution of polys and stuff, weird density issues. So yeah, just watch the spacing a little bit here. And I can also tweak, you know, once I bring this back into ZBrush, I could sort of tweak this to match the face a little better as well. But these are just sort of broad guidelines that work fairly well for the most part. Okay. And again, projecting too will kind of reestablish the sort of surface detail to fit the form. There we go. So I'm just going to move this little loop over. And I want to just break this up as well. Let's go multi-cut again. So I'm going to run that edge over here instead. Yeah. So I think what I can do, I'm probably going to merge these 2 loops. I'll try that, see what happens. No. Yeah, let's go vertex. Okay, so I'm just going to slide this stuff around, just distribute it a little bit better. Actually, in this case, I'm going to turn off the edge mode for a second. Just focus on this mouth area a bit. So what I might do is just kind of move these 3 points into more of a corner shape. Hopefully you guys can see that. There. So what that should allow me to do, basically, yeah, I think I got another little loop issue here. So in this case, I kind of want to mimic, like I said, the shape from above and below. So I think I'm going to need to actually insert an edge loop here. Or sometimes what I'll do, so you see there's this sort of loop up here that's flowing in and this loop here. I want to kind of mimic that down here. So what I'll do is I'll take this loop. Instead of actually inserting a loop, I'll just try to bevel that. And I'll turn edge constraint back on so I maintain the kind of surface integrity. So let's bevel that. And it's going to give me roughly the same kind of result. Yeah, so that's pretty decent overall. I might increase the fraction setting a bit. I'll probably need to manually slide the loops around a bit. And I'm going to collapse this little loop here. Collapse that. So we get this sort of same shape happening. There we go, vertex. Slide these over. Yeah, let's push this down and back if I can. Or sometimes you'll have to turn off the constraint if it's not really flowing right. But okay. All right. And then again, I'll turn edge constraint back on and just pay very close attention to the spacing so I can kind of distribute these a little better. So again, I don't get any weird kind of pinching results later on if this thing gets smoothed or brought back into Maya down the road for blend shapes and stuff. So. And yeah, for the creature stuff we're doing next, I won't be so precise because, you know, with creatures or cartoony characters, you can kind of be a little more free with, you know, the anatomy and just say, oh, it's an alien, so whatever. No big deal. All right. Okay, so I'm just kind of nudging points back in space a bit. There we go. Yeah, some other little issues with the mesh down here, so I'm just going to kind of clean up a few little bits and pieces that maybe weren't cut right or had some issues when I last edited this thing. So I just want to kind of do a quick overview and make sure there's no weirdness throughout the model. And I may simplify this down. So you see sometimes you have a lot of loops in the face area, but again, they're getting kind of dense in the neck, so I may cheat this a little bit just as this sort of changes from chin, jawline to neck. I'm going to collapse this area and just simplify the mesh down here. So that, again, the density is a little more consistent. I don't need as much detail there. And then I can probably slide this over just a bit. Yeah, so that's pretty decent. So again, we got, you know, a couple of nice circular loops around the mouth that go cleanly through. Looks like I've got a 5-sided poly here, so I may just collapse that down. A lot of this is kind of pushing your problems out to another spot to see, you know, where you can kind of let things rest as a triangle or a quad or something. Sorry, not a quad, but yeah, let me just merge this stuff together here. Yeah. So again, a lot of times I try to push the problem out somewhere else. Usually it'll be there'll be like a 5-sided an n-gon or something around the sort of outer eye loop area, upper cheek area. Yeah, let's take a look at this. So again, you can sort of see I'm just pushing the problem elsewhere until I can find a way to really get rid of it. So in this case, yeah, this This is just going into the upper forehead. I can pretty much merge that down as well and fix that area up. So a lot of times you'll have an n-gon, which is, sorry, not an n-gon, but a pole, which is more than 4 edges connecting to one vert. So typically there'll be one somewhere in the cheek area, usually one around the nostril area or nose area. So yeah, these are kind of common places for these things. You just generally don't want them right around the mouth or right around the eyelids, because it can cause weird deformations and smoothing and all sorts of other problems. Okay, so what I'll do next, I'm going to just grab the loop around the lips here, the lip opening that I created. I'll deselect the 2 little corner edges, and I can pretty much just bridge this together. Let me just try that. Bridge. So I may in fact even add, just a little trick, I'll do a bridge but with 1 division and apply that. So you see I actually now have what might eventually become like a little lip line. Let me turn off the edge constraint and I can push that back. Right. So, and then what that leaves me, if you guys can see, would be a quad size opening. I'll just fill that area. Eventually that would be extruded back into the mouth and form a mouth cavity down the road. But for the most part, I've got fairly clean loops. If you guys aren't sure about how to form the loops, there's a bunch of references on Moodle. Let's see. Yeah, if I go my Dawson. Sorry, I had to do attendance verification today, but Moodle, yeah. So if you go to Moodle under character modeling, you'll see there's a little section called Topology reference images under class resources. So there are a bunch of different sort of very basic to more complex reference images. So this would be a broad strokes version of what the topology would look like. So it's a good kind of more generalized guideline, and then there's some more detailed examples. And if you Google face topology, you'll see a lot of really good examples there as well. So this would be okay. Yeah, this one's pretty good. All right, so I also had a little issue too. I noticed some of these edges were created after I brought some of this stuff together in Maya last time. So I'm going to just let me just go to edge mode, I guess. Edge mode, multi-cut, and then yeah, let's do that. Vertex. There we go. So I'm actually kind of adding a few little, just cleaning up all of this so it's quad based, but I tend to kind of cluster some of these little changes in this area because you get a lot of dimpling and folding in here when you make certain facial expressions, like bringing your brows in towards the middle. So it's a good place to kind of do something like this to help clean up that area. I'm also noticing too, I think if I look at this edge loop, this one could probably go entirely. I don't think it's super useful there, so I'm going to just take this stuff out. There. Now left behind a little triangle, so I'm going to actually just collapse that. Since it's on an edge, I can easily collapse it, and it brings me back to a more quad-based mesh down there. So yeah, I think that's pretty good and clean for the most part. I mean, there might be some stuff I could do around the nostril, but I think for now I can pretty much live with that. Alright, so I'm going to mirror this thing. Mirror, I think it's going to go -X on this, and I'm going to merge. Yeah, let's apply. I think that's pretty good. If the shading looks a little strange, what you can do is just simply click on the mesh, go to Mesh Display, and do a Soften Edge, and it'll kind of soften out all the loops. You may, as a precautionary step, want to go to Mesh Cleanup and just make sure anything with more than 4 sides is taken care of. Lamina Faces, non-manifold geometry, and edges with 0 length. Lamina Faces are basically when you have technically 2 edges connected to 2 vertices. Basically 2 verts will connect with an edge. But sometimes when you have like mesh editing, you get a lot of weird results. And so you might have two vertices, but they actually have two edges connecting them instead of just one. So you have what's called Lamina Face, which is essentially a face with no surface. Bit of a weird glitch. Non-manifold geometry, weird edges with zero length. So again, a similar situation. You have technically two vertices sitting on top of each other. Therefore, there's an edge that has no length whatsoever. So this kind of helps clean up the bad stuff. But we want to be careful because we want to make sure that we also don't get more bad stuff. Yeah, so I may go like option by option to see what happens. Yeah, let's just turn up the, yeah. So I may leave off this faces with with four sides or more than four sides, sorry, and just stick to the kind of bad geometry stuff. And then I'll double check. So those areas that were being highlighted, I may want to just grab a polygon. I'll turn off constraints. I'll grab a polygon just to make sure. So you see there's actually, if we go to vertex display, there's actually a few little vertices kind of left behind, maybe from me removing a loop. So if I grab those verts and just backspace them, should take them out. Oh, there's another one up here somewhere. There's a few of them actually. I should have been really careful, I guess. When you remove edge loops, it's kind of a weird function. But yeah, when you remove edge loops, never just go to the edge loop like, let's say I do this. If you hit backspace, there's a problem with this, and then it leaves behind the vertex. So you want to hit Control backspace, which actually removes the loop and the associated vertices on the cross edges. So just be very careful of that. So I'll switch back on the faces with more than four sides, just so I can double check and see if there are any. I might even hit. Yeah, I'll hit 4 as well to make sure I can kind of see any highlighted areas, but I think now I'm okay. The mesh is clean. So that's nice. It's important. By the way, you could also do a quick unwrap if you wanted to prepare this thing down the road for potential unwrapping. You could literally go, let me go to the UV editor. This thing is a complete disaster. But I'll go in and just go quickly UV planar just to establish a basic set of UVs. And Maya's got this really great tool, which is called the, what is it called? Oh, I just found another weird edge or vertex issue down here, so let me just clean this up. So, yeah, I'll double click this edge. It should travel all the way up into this area. So for me, a basic unwrap would kind of flow up until the edge of the hairline. And yeah, I'm just going to deselect this. Sorry.
What if you just select the vertices, like the whole mesh, and you just click the delete? Because I tried to do this and it just deletes the vertices that it doesn't use.
Yeah, if it works, that works fine. Yeah, sure. I mean, as long as you get rid of the vertices that are just sitting there doing nothing, whatever method you find that works is fine by me. So yeah, what I'm going to do with this is just go in here and do a cut UVs, and then I'll go to shell, and I can simply go unfold. So unfold will try to kind of flatten this thing out. So yeah, I guess I need to, yeah, where is the, so some of these edges didn't split. So I'm going to just cut these UVs again, go to shell. Essentially what you're looking for is like kind of like a Halloween mask. There we go. A Halloween mask kind of layout. And so you can kind of get a fairly distortion-free set of UVs pretty quickly. For some reason there's a split here. Now I'm not requiring UVs, but I'm just kind of showing you guys this as a possible, yeah, let's just sew those UVs together. So I'll right-click, shift right-click, sew UVs. Yeah, let's just make sure. Oh, there's another weird edge there, actually. Cut those UVs. So where is that? Where are you? Yeah, sometimes things get, a little glitchy. There's, yeah, this little vertex can probably go. There we go. So I'll just cut those UVs. Yeah, another weird little floating vertex. That could have been from the merge as well, but let's go to shell. So sometimes I'll do this just as a kind of quick prep for down the road. We'll just do unfold again. we go. A lot of times too, I'll kind of cut the bottom area, the mouth out. I won't get too much further into this because I don't want to get into UVs right now, but can be very useful to have in the early stages of production. Even a crappy set of UVs is sometimes better than none. But all right, so I'll just go simply back to ZBrush, go Z, and because I've kept this model open, right? So if I just show you the wireframe. Best thing about this is you simply just have to go Z back. So there's an error importing the mesh. So I think I have to do another double check for mesh issues. Edit mesh. Clean up. It's doing this thing again. It's weird. So yeah, let me just find some of these weird verts hanging out. I'm not sure where these came from because I feel like I didn't see them earlier, but yeah, there's a bunch of them showing up across the seam here. So I'm just going to quickly tidy those up. It looks like it was probably an issue with the mirroring. So I want to just very carefully double check all that. Yeah, I think it'll be okay. Over the lip? Oh, yeah, right there. Good catch. Thank you. Yeah, you need to be kind of eagle-eyed for this. Again. Why, Maya, why?
There's one on top of the nose, I think.
Yeah. On top of the nose?
Like the eyebrow line.
No.
Why don't you try to select all of the vertices and press delete? Maybe it'll delete all of the...
Well, if I just select them all and hit delete, yeah, I mean, it could work. No. Still. Okay, so. This is probably a good thing. Yeah, when you have errors like this, one of the ways you can kind of clean your mesh, let me just double check. There might be one in here too. Yeah, I don't think there's one there either, but all right, I'll try to go back to the cleanup tool. Just gonna hit 4. I think everything's clean now for the most part. So I'll go through the other options here and check for yeah, faces with 0 geometry area as well. Let's just try that. Okay, so that worked. There was something there. So I turned on this option, faces with 0 geometry. So there might have actually been another weird face hanging out somewhere. So now when I go Z this, it says the topology of the mesh has changed. So just watch the lip layout, right, the mouth area. Do you want to transfer the high poly detail to the modified mesh? So I'm basically saying let's replace the current base mesh with this new mesh. And it's going to keep the high poly sculpting detail. So I definitely want to say yes. It's going to transfer. It takes a while to project, especially if your high subdivision is quite slow. There may be some issues. You guys can see there's a little glitch here, probably because I created that little mouth area, right? So I may just step up in resolution. Yeah, let's bring this down. I'll just sort of smooth this back a bit, and I'll probably have to do a little bit of touch-up sculpting and maybe move that lip line a bit. So sometimes, you know, when you're doing this work, there will be sort of revisions that need to be made in the sculpt. Yeah, so I'm just going to clean up some of this stuff and yeah. So that mouth area, I'm probably going to have to shift those verts at the low res. I would shift them up and move them into the right position. So for you guys, I don't really recommend, you don't have to make that kind of indented mouth cavity area like I did. You can you can kind of just leave the lips closed, but I often find it a little bit easier to kind of maneuver and reposition the loops by creating that little extra kind of cavity that I built there. So I'm just fixing it up at each sort of subdivision level. So again, there'll probably be a little bit of touch-up sculpting to do for me in this case. But that's basically it. You know, doing the mount topology, right? Working those areas. It's really just about getting a you know, 2, 3, 4 loops that radiate out from the opening, or what would be the opening of the mouth, outwards. And that's basically it. So if we go down to our lowest res, we've got nice, fairly good topology that is basically animation ready now in the eye area as well as the lip area, right? So having those concentric circles is going to be very, very useful. So yeah, some of my weird topology appears to be happening in the corners, so I think I need to kind of go back and hit that area one more time. But you know, I'll let you guys keep working